Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Wait. Okay, so I will start my speech in three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, currently in our world right now, there are lots of environmental issues like soil pollution, air pollution, climate change, and etc. And one of the reason is because the amount of waste that are being produced by the humans, right? And yeah, we start right now. Currently, there's a new trend in our society called fast fashion, a trendy and cheap clothing that produced rapidly in the market as a response to the latest trends, right? The idea is based on expensive and low quality designs that move quickly from the catwalk to the shop. For example, every weeks and every season, this fast fashion, they will try to make new products based on the trends and in order to attract their society. The main problem of this fast fashion is that how it actually affects the environment because that produce too much new clothing in every week, how they intensely promote it to the world, and it actually costs tons of textiles being traced in the end of the day, right? And it's really impacting with the amount of waste from factories and etc. What makes it actually worse is that the fact that some textile spend almost 200 years to decompose by soil, make our current environment just go to worse. Because Earth needs lots of time to decompose this thing, which means this waste will stay longer in our environment and it will only gonna worse the current pollution in our environment. Although we also know that fashion industry is also one of the biggest industry that contribute to the most waste in our world, right? Even though there are already lots of activism movement, and also we know that there are lots of activism and environmentalists actually neglect this kind of idea, actually disagree with this kind of idea because they think that it's really harm our environment in this world. So here I'm going to talk about three things. First, why it's justified to live fast fashion. Secondly, how our model will support the activism movement in the end of the day. And thirdly, how we're going to reach our goal as the government. So first, let's talk about why it's actually justified. First, not just about its affect the environment, not just because the textile takes longer to decompose, because it's also we think that it's also related to the habit of the society. For example, society and the Western countries, in the developed countries, like how there is something called throwing clothes culture, how they only buy those clothes as a temporary use. We know that there are lots of people in those countries that are already privileged enough who only look for fame and luxury, that how they only buy that clothes one just in order to find trends and then just trash it down, although it's nothing, as if it's nothing. And by having this fast fashion with uncontrolled production, which it's actually going to harm and make a lot and more ways in the end of the day. And also, let's see about the characteristic of the Gen Z itself, like how the Gen Z, the teenagers nowadays are really level, they are really obsessed. They are basically still adapting with the modern world and actually impact with a huge amount of consumption of fast fashion in the end of the day. It will only gonna worse the scenario and it will only gonna bring more waste in the end of the day because we cannot control the uncontrolled feeling of teenagers. We know that teenagers nowadays are really obsessed with trends, like how most of them already have social media. They idolize someone or from the celebrities and etc. who likely follow the trend, and it makes them really worsen their obsession and just gonna make them to copy them and etc. Which impacting with a huge amount of consumption. And secondly, why I think that is justified, because we think that the status quo now is starting to be progressive. Because let's see about why the reason fast fashion is exists in the first place. Because we know that lots of people think that it's cheap and affordable, right? But we think that we already have a solution as a government here, where there are already lots of brands, for example, like recycle fashion and etc. Like how a cheap clothing that also contains a more eco-friendly products, while why how they recycle the waste into a new brand new clothing and etc. And also we think that the quality of the recycled fashion is not lower than the fast fashion. Why? Because there are the companies that promote this recycled fashion, that promote this eco-friendly fashion is actually companies that are already in the high with high standard, with high name like Victorian Secret and etc. And it's already part of their movement in order to protect and also promote eco-friendly. And also why we think that it's also justified for us to support, because we think that this movement, this recycle fashion is actually helping us to decrease the waste that currently happening that cause pollution and etc. Instead of just putting and add more problem that unlike what happening to the fast fashion. And also moving on to why in the end of the day we're going to support the activism movement. We know that there are lots of activism movement, environmentalist movement in our world right now, like how there are lots of people starting to declare themselves to be environmentalists and how they already contribute lots of money in order to fix this problem. You know that there are already lots of organizations that are trying to think for a solution and also an effective policy in order to prevent climate change and etc. Right? And as the government, we want to honor their work. We want to honor their work hard. In this case, we want to support them because by helping by keep promoting how important is recycled fashion, how important it is to try to decrease the amount of waste that you produce in everyday life. It's actually going to impact our world, and this is as our starting point as the government. We also think that there are lots of organizations like United Nations and etc. who already contribute a lot to this environment problem, because one of the huge problem on why our environment is damaged is because the existence of humans, right now. It is our job to make sure that our humans are open-minded enough in order to face climate change. And the fact is that by using fast fashion, where there are lots of people who actually obsessed with that, it's only going to worsen the scenario, how we cannot control how much the teenagers may buy these products, how much the Western countries will just throw away these products in the end of the day, and how much these products will actually going to be produced each week and only going to bring the amount of textile being waste and more pollution in the end of the day. I think that climate change is a very serious problem because currently it already caused lots of disaster like wildfire and etc. That also not just impacting the earth as a whole, but also impacting the society. So what we do as the government here, we're trying to do something that actually gonna help the society also in the end of the day. That's why we're gonna lead them to stop using this fast fashion trend and move on to another trend like recycle, which is more eco-friendly and also with the same standard of quality, because we think that it's our job to protect this earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to open the case from the oppositions, I welcome the leader of oppositions here. Leader of oppositions, are you here?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Wait a minute, let me set my timer first. Oh, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels. The government side of the house is, like mainly talking about the one point. That is the, like they want to support the activist environmentalist program, which is they want, like promoting how we will need to save the environment and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. But we need to notice is that the environmentalists or any activists need to protect the vulnerable actors here, ladies and gentlemen. Who is the vulnerable actors? Vulnerable actor is that the someone who have immune and also have no capacity to buy or they have no purchasing power and so on and so forth in limit, ladies and gentlemen. For example, like middle and low class in society, ladies and gentlemen, which is the main customer that we are talking about in here, ladies and gentlemen. Who here, ladies and gentlemen, it is egoistic when the moment the activists, the activists impose this kind of proposal towards this kind of people. Because of what? Because they want to force for everyone, even if you are mainstream, even if you're middle low class society, you need to buy something expensive. For example, like Gucci. For example, like eco-friendly material, clothing, and so on and so forth. In order to how you save the world, this is something that unpractical in government side of the house. Because of what? Because this kind of activists cannot force, for for individuals to buy any expensive clothes in the sake of environment in itself, ladies and gentlemen. What we want to impose in this debate, ladies and gentlemen, it is more practical when the moment these activists or environmentalists more practically giving the practical alternative. For example, like they can do a socialization, educate the society, this kind of middle society, the how to like recycling the waste, for example, recycling the trash, recycling how you can use this kind of uh, a former clothing to the something else in the end of the day, how you're recycling this kind of clothes with another product and so on and so forth. This kind of practical alternative is more accessible rather than you just force for individuals to buy an expensive brand. So that's why I think that all the mechanisms that they bring at the very first time will not fly anymore. Let's go to our problems. We say the fashion is how reflects ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Fashion, when the moment you want to follow the trend in itself, ladies and gentlemen, is our adaptive mechanism, ladies and gentlemen, for good. For example, like on how your socialization, on how you self-love, on how you self-protection in current status quo, for example. Because so that's why follow the trend is not a problem, ladies and gentlemen. Our stand just simple. We want to follow the fast fashion as a tools to expression ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, as a human rights and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. My first, I'm going to talk about why the fast fashion justified to follow. That's characterization of the men's customer that less likely explained by the government side of the house. Let's talk about the privileged people. Okay, privileged people, we don't have a problem with that because of they can buy Gucci just one slide credit with just one slide, for example. That's not the problem. But the problem is that the main customer here that we want to debate, ladies and gentlemen. For example, the main customer is that the song in the middle class, ladies and gentlemen. For example, they most likely seek for the affordable clothing, for example. The type of job, this kind of mainstream is still not settled, for example, like coffee bar or just like someone's in not settled income and so on and so forth. But the second the thirdly, they are student, for example. They just follow the how the egoist and the egoistic, and also they follow their their emotion and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. So this kind of character, this type of consumer, ladies and gentlemen, they have they really are concerned about the fast fashion itself, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the behavior of this kind of mainstream customer. Let's talk about we agree that this kind of customer and their money is limited, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why. But in current status quo, there are so many alternatives. Why then this kind of fast fashion will going to be recycling again, ladies and gentlemen? For example, like the idea of pre-love and thrift shop, for example, they will buy a new clothes after they sell the clothes they use past in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. For example, like this thrift shop or a pre-love, ladies and gentlemen, accept all the clothing, for example, sell for the cheaper price and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. So in the end of the day, this kind of mainstream customer, in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, when the moment the trend already passed, for example, they can do like thrift shop and pre-love in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. What happened next, ladies and gentlemen? This kind of pre-love and thrifting shop, for example, can use by the low society, ladies and gentlemen. For example, they can get like a clothing with a really really cheaper price, for example. They can really they can use the brand the fast fashion in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why at least in our side we can manage with the middle low class society, ladies and gentlemen, that the environment want to protect at the very first time, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, why force the mainstream customer to use the luxury brand is egoistic proposal, ladies and gentlemen. I admit that the government will say that the brand, for example, will never be trash and waste because of that is really precious, right? But but the problem is that this type of things cannot afford by the mainstream customer. There are two analysis of this, ladies and gentlemen. First, they will not follow the fast fashion, for example. The problem is that when the moment they not follow the fast fashion, they are going to be judged by their friends because of they are different. But secondly, when the moment they follow, for example, it's too pricey. The idea of credit, the idea of debt, the idea of cicil and so on and so forth, it's going to be harm for those kind of mainstream, this kind of mainstream customer. That's going to be trade off. Yes, we agree that we are going to be changed fastly and so on and so forth. But this kind of things there is a mechanism in current status quo. For example, like the charity donation discrimination and so on and so forth, it still exists in current status quo. For example, like your past clothes, for example, you can donate towards the victim of natural disaster, for example. You can go to the poverty, for example. You can go for the orphans house, for example. This kind of thing is already happened in current status quo, ladies and gentlemen. What the implication is that? Implication is that the circulation of the fast fashion clothing is still rolling, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why you're worried about like they are going to be trust and so on and so forth will going to be less likely to be happen, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the awareness in the end of the day. The natural of the customer, they are more likely follow the role model, for example, like celebgram and so on and so forth. But the point is the celebgram is the someone who educated, who really well educated about the environment issue and so on and so forth. So that's why at least this kind of customer follow the someone who really understand about the environment and so on and so forth. In the end of the day, they have understanding about how you need to protect your environment because of your follow your model in the end of the day. For example, our current and so forth, they promote about the environment issue and so on and so forth. At least this kind of healthy trend in the end of the day is already still can apply in current status quo. So that's why we don't want to be egoistic and we want to protect all the layers of society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to communicate from the government, I welcome the second speaker of the government side of the house. Here.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. Response toward the opposition side. They bring the idea on how this fast fashion will touch every the middle class society. We think as a government, it already get the middle class in our side already catered by the thrift shop itself and already catered by the recycled clothing itself. But the opposition side don't think on how they're gonna be think on how the after impact of this industry to do fast fashion itself in the end of the day, which will be impact the climate change, the impact for the climate change for the worst case in the future. And the government, the opposition side of the house don't explain to us on how they're going to handle the amount of broke clothes who already throw up towards the society, and it's gonna be harm the quality of the environment itself in the end of the day, right? And then
Right.
they bring the idea on how this clothes will be charity towards the low middle class, low to middle class society itself, right? But we acknowledge that this will be this low to middle class society is not that privileged, because they are the one who gonna be get the bad
At that
impact.
point, please.
No, thank you. Such a natural disaster in the end of the day, right? Which is they don't have the enough privilege to do preventive action in the end of the day. Jumps towards my argument. Fast fashion is the moment when industry of fashion trying to portray their best fashion catalog every week to every week in a fast tempo in order to fetch many customers in order to buy their clothes. But you need to acknowledge that these clothes, this fashion that made by this industry is already in the low quality of fabric, and it's already and in the end of the day it's easily to broke and trigger the impact of the environment, which is it will bad for the climate change itself, right? Why it is not in line with the goal? Why it is not in line with the goal of activism of the environment? First, this clothes is not made by the eco-friendly stuff itself, right? We are the moment when these clothes are broke, that is the moment the customer will throwing that into garbage, or they're gonna be throwing that in garbage, right? This is problematic for the quality of the environment because the clothes are made by a toxic chemical, which is fabric is need a long term that decompose in the earth, and in the end of the day it will harm the quality of air, water, and etc. Right? Second, this fashion is in the end of the day will hamper the interest and the goal of activism itself, because activism already
Before that,
embrace the idea that you need to do recycle on how this you need to press the amount of clothes that you made as an industry itself, right? And you and the moment when this clothes made, it's gonna be impact the labor itself, which is the quality of which is the stuff that made by this textile. It's already there's toxic chemical itself in the fabric itself, right? And why it is not exclusive for dual fast fashion in our side? Because first, it's gonna be trigger a consumerism towards the society. The target of industry fashion mostly targeting developing country, right? Which is the developing country is the middle to low society, which is they want to, which is this is the momentum for them to catch up with the fashion with the fashion towards the world, right? The moment when this fashion apply this trend, it will be trigger this society to buy more, to be customer, to be consumerism, without actually knowing what is the background, what is the background on how this clothes will be impact the environment in the end of the day. The more the society buy this fashion, the more it's gonna be harm the environment, because first it's hard to compose, and the society is not educated enough to know what is the background on how this fashion are made are gonna be impact their environment itself. And in the end of the day, there is no counterbalance on how to control the impact of this fashion towards the environment itself, right? And then what's gonna be happen? What's gonna be happen in the market of clothes itself? It's gonna be create more competition towards the market in the fashion of market. We believe this fashion majorly only brings the advantage towards only the industry itself,
before that,
because no, thank you. They are the one who create amount of fashion, which is not really eco-friendly, and they're not create on how they gonna on how the regulation that they made on how they gonna be more eco-friendly towards their own industry itself, which is they ignore the impact for the long term of the climate on how they're gonna facing the climate change towards the society, towards the world itself. This is very immoral for you as a market industry of fashion, because this is very immoral, because they are the one who harming the process of movement of activism itself, which is they want to minimize the impact of climate change. And this industry are not completely joined with the movement of the environment itself, which is it bad, and will bring more burden towards the activism itself, in order to embrace the idea of in order to embrace the idea on how you need to minimize the impact of the climate change itself, right? And this activism will be and these poor people in your side will only suffer in the end of the day, because in the fast fashion will damage the environment of trigger natural disaster. These poor people were not gonna be survived. Such as, for example, when they got when people don't have us when it's flood, and this poor people don't have a strong foundation of food. This is gonna be that is the example on how this fast fashion will impact the low middle the low class of society itself, right? And this activity lastly, this activism will the movement of activism to embrace the idea of not using a product that will be made trigger more climate change, which is it's gonna be dangerous for the long term impact of how on how this gonna be on how this climate change movement is not only about solving and also preventive action, which is we need to avoid it and find a way find a best way to do so, right? the only stakeholder who can control this climate change is only activism. But with the goal of activism, they want to make society acknowledge about the idea of this climate change itself. That's why we proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. So to continue the case from the oppositions, I welcome the second speaker of oppositions here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
If you want to give me a POI, please just unmute yourself. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm as the second speaker of the opposition team. I would like to tell you about many cases that will explain my arguments, and also I have to give the rebuttal about the idea that given by the first and the second speaker of the government team about our motion today that this house will leave past passion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is many idea that I see from the government team. It is so debatable. The first is they said that society in developing countries will buy their fashion temporarily. Because of that, they can donate their old fashion, right? Because they are just temporarily buying their fashions, so they can just leave their or just save their old fashion, and they can use that fashion again. They just use a newer fashion, the newest fashion, so they can donate their old fashion, or they can make new clothes from their old fashion, or like they can recycle that clothes to become bag or wallet or blanket that is useful and more eco-friendly. And also they say that society was already come up with our environmental issue. That's why we as the opposition team, we will not leave fast fashions, because we are realized that the society's awareness about environmental conditions were enough, ladies and gentlemen, because society society have using shopping bags, society has using the stainless steel straw, society society was aware about the environmental campaigns like World Cleanup Day and so on and so forth. And also they say that toxic technical that causing by the fast fashion is so bad. But I say it as second speaker, if they use or if they product more fashions, they can make more money, right? They can make more consumer from their company, so they have money to recycle their waste to make CS like our company nowadays were CSR, that is they have corporate social responsibility, so that is their responsibility to recycle their waste. We are not worry again about it, and also it is the responsibility of the government to make the awareness of the company itself to recycle their waste, to not damage the environmental around the company itself. And also they say that we do not have any privilege to characterize the society into middle society. Also they say that middle class don't have a capacity to prevent. But the question is how you impose your proposal to force anyone use eco-friendly clothes, which is it is expensive, right? Eco-friendly clothes, it is expensive. So by characterize this middle society, we realize as the opposition team that eco-friendly clothes is expensive. So just middle class society just buying their fashions, their basic fashions by fast fashions, and they can reuse it as a blanket if they are, or they can donate it if they are not using it again as well. And also, come to my arguments right now. my first speaker will talk to you about the fast fashion is the best solutions to raise the human rights, especially about their kind of expression. Well, people can be more confident with their fashion, even if they are feeling insecure with their body or face, but it is can be alternative to make them okay and uncomfortable with their own condition, right? Because as we know that fast fashion right now not only as something that cover your body, but you can make your own money by your fashion trend. Like for example, you can make your vlog tips and trick in YouTube how to mix and match your fashion, and it is will make your own money. So when you can make your own money, you can buy shopping bag, you can buy your a stainless straw that is so eco-friendly, ladies and gentlemen, and it will be helpful in the environmental campaign itself that government team won, ladies and gentlemen. And also, we believe that fast fashions help the government to get more income and help environmental conditions. I would like to tell you that I will try to tell you how the society awareness and the government has aware about the environmental issue first, because nowadays the environmental issues was so booming in international, even in not only in the national sector but also in international sector, like World Cleanup Day were so booming in our international campaigns, environmental campaigns. So our society were already realized that so many environmental issues that there's so damage our environment, like using shopping bag. I see that it is so useful to reduce the plastic, and also the government were so aware about it, like zero school means that if you are want to buy some food in your canteen, you have to bring your plastics, or you have to bring something that not you use again. And also, but because of that awareness that very enough to society and also the government, so the fast fashions make income from producer to buy recycle machines to recycle the emissions, and also CSR. Fast fashions itself can make the company more income, like they have more money to recycle their waste, to recycle their old clothes to be as I say that they can be a blanket or be useful thing, or they can donate it. So it was so many benefit that equal even more that the damage that that caused by the face fashion itself. So if we compare as the opposition team and also to the government team, if we are let the fast fashion trending in our society, we just can get some so many beneficial to the environmental itself that a government team wants. So there is no reasons to why we have to leave fast fashion itself, ladies and gentlemen. Even if you could afford the luxury brand, the natural woman can still have any boring right, like to wear the same clothes. So the fast fashions is come to our trend, come to our society to make a new flavor, new feeling for of the society itself, like meaning the idea of the donation is never in government, and they're willing to collect all brand stuff, even the not using it because it's precious. Well, that's why me as the second speaker of the opposition teams believe that we do not have to leave fast fashions, because if the government wanted to want us to help the environmental issues, to want us to help environmental conditions to make better, we just have to to let the fast fashions come to our society. Thank you.
Thank you. So now to close the case from the affirmative, please welcome the chair speaker of the affirmative. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. Several clarifications and responses over government, towards side opposition, right? First, on the idea that they want to make sure that this fast fashion is will be donated towards the poor people, right? Understand that we cannot generalize that all people at the end of the day will donate their clothes, right? Understand that there are lazy people who doesn't have the consciousness to actually donate towards these poor people, right? Team opposition has failed to guarantee us that all of these clothing will be donated towards these poor people, right? There will still be clothes that will be thrown away at the end of the day itself, ladies and gentlemen. This will lead towards the environmental damage that I'll explain later at my arguments. And second, we never said that we will say that, oh, you have to buy expensive clothes, right? What we're trying to push here is that we want to leave the fast fashion itself, right? Because there are other counterbalances for these middle class people to actually buy good clothes itself, right? Without the brand itself. Understand what makes fast fashion is that they have the brand of Zara and H&M itself, right? Those are the things that we regret in this motion, right? Moving towards my argument first, let's talk about the economical side of this
Before
debate.
6.
No, thank you. The economical side of this debate, right? The biggest mistake coming from team government is that they have failed to understand that just because fast fashion is cheap, it doesn't mean that consumerism does not exist, right? It doesn't mean that all the middle classes is somehow can actually be rich itself, right? Understand that the moment that these fast fashion are very cheap is also the moment that all of these people, all of these middle class, buy more of this fast fashion stuff, right? So what this will create, right? The idea of consumerism, where most of these middle class is not free on choosing their own trend, on choosing their own clothes, but are now limited because they want to follow the trend itself, right? They want to follow their friends so that they can actually become trendy, right? This will create them buying more clothes from this stuff, right? Even if they are so cheap, right? They will still buy so many of them until they are still broke, right? So the idea of these people are getting broke is still exists, right? Especially the market target of this fast fashion are teenagers, right? We know that these teenagers are very harmful stakeholders because understand that they have other things that they need to prioritize. For example, their college tuition and this time, right? These are the moments that these people cannot be consumptive at the end of the day. No, thank you. And then even if that they would really needed to
POI, please.
no, thank you. Even if they need some kind of accessibility towards this trend, at least we still in the status quo exist, right? For example, thrift shop, right? And exactly thrift shop exists so that these middle class people actually have the ability to actually get branded clothes, even if they are a second wear stuff, right? Even they can get still good clothes with the expensive brand from this thrift shop itself, right? So they still can become trendy without the existence of the fashion, without the fast fashion stuff, right? So there is no reason itself. And second reason, even there are other brands that gives the exact quality as the other, for example, name brands, for example, Zara and H&M that are not as famous as stuff, right? There are still other brands that still, for example, use better textiles that still use less chemicals in their process itself, right? They are not that harmful to the environment that doesn't have the name of the brand, so they give their product a cheap price. No, thank you. So therefore, for all those reasons, we believe that at the end of the day, there are no reasons to make there are no reasons for this middle class to actually push the fast fashion itself, right? And then let's talk about the environmental side, right? And firstly, understand that there are three characterizations of this fast fashion stuff. First, that they most likely use cheap dye textiles that have a very high potential towards damaging the environment, right? Understand that all these companies are profit oriented, so that they have and still they want to suppress their budget so they can gain the most profit. So what do? They use a more cheaper dye or textile so that they, even if it harms the environment, so that they can get more money. And second categorization is that they usually have more quantity rather than quality, right? So there are more risk at the end of the day, right? We cannot guarantee that. Even if they recycle and give towards people, at the end of the day, these clothes will end up in the rubbish bin, right? Understand that they are not infinitely used. And third characterizations is that they are very low quality. So what does it mean? That they are very easy to be damaged, and so therefore it is more likely for these people to throw these clothes away, right? So it will, for example, the throwaway culture that like my first speaker stated before, right? So the idea of throwing away clothes is very high under the fast under the fast fashion side itself, and moreover harming the environment itself, right? Understand that most of these companies doesn't want to recycle these textiles in the fast fashion industry because they're so profit oriented, so they don't want to waste any more of their budget just to, for example, for the environment. I understand that these companies are most likely do not care about the environment itself, right? Understand that the companies have the more abilities to save the environment rather than society. Exactly because society already have the awareness, right? So who does not have the awareness now? The companies itself, ladies and gentlemen. So therefore, we need to push the company itself, not the society, right? Understand they also have the more capability because they have the more privileges and they have the more money itself, right? They are richer than society, so they have the more capabilities to actually save the environment rather than society, who will most likely have less money to actually help the environment itself, right? Understand even if they give so many economical benefit, environment is still more important, right? Understand that the environment, it won't stop itself, right? Global warming will still exist, the toxic waste will still exist itself, right? It will still keep going, right? Earth is get warmer and the waste is piling on. This is very hard to solve. That is exactly the reason why we want to make sure that we want to prioritize the environment more, because they are the more ardent itself, right? The polar ice caps are melting. The cute polar bears are dying itself, right? We believe that is not comparable towards the economic side, especially considering that it is a trend, right? So what does the trend mean? The moment that the trend happens, more companies will actually join as itself. For example, because they know, oh, I can get more money in this fast fashion industry itself because it's cheap and I can sell many of them itself, right? So what will this create? It will create more companies to actually follow the fast fashion industry, and which will create a cycle where more and more companies join and create more fast fashion industry that harms the environment itself, right? So why the economic is not that important, right? Understand the economical side, there are still counterbalances at the end of the day, right? For example, let's talk about the consumerism that the consumer that I told you. There are there are other clothing brands that are not as expensive, that doesn't use the fast fashion use the fast fashion mechanism itself, right? And then talk about the fashion industry, right? Within the fashion industry is still rich, right? Is already rich, so therefore they are not as urgent for us to actually limit them on doing the fast fashion industry itself, right? They still have the capabilities to sustain even if we limit the fast fashion itself, right? Because they are so rich itself, and then they want also recycle, right? Understand with the idea of recycling, it can still give profit towards these fashion industries, and that is why we're very proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next, to close the debate from oppositions as well as to close the debate, please welcome the third speaker of the negative side of the House. Here.
That's all. Let me setting up my timer first. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that all the arguments of the government benches is not really practical. Like, proposals, since they're going to only cater certain layer of the society, since they're going to impose a burden to all of the people to actually being environmentalist without and neglected the idea that being environmental might be very costly. More people might not be able to afford for environmental things. That's why it is very hard for them to at the end of the day reach the goal that government side of the house wants at the very first beginning. There are two big clashes in this debate. The first is that on how the fashion itself is going to be look like, whether or not we're going to still follow the fast fashion or we're going to live it. But second of all, let's talk about the idea in environmental, which proposal that is going to create a better better impact for the environmental and better waste regulation at the end of the day. Now let's talk about the first clash. Which proposal that is going to be, how the fashion is going to be look like under both sides. Government side of the house opposing the idea of the fast fashion because they said that it is not environmentalist, because but it did not explain what kind of fashion do they want at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. They are neglected the importance of clothing as form of self-actualization, self-love, self-branding, and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. Because somehow you need to use a different fashion based on different occasion and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you cannot use only one one clothes to every occasion, ladies and gentlemen, because that's going to be very weird at some point, ladies and gentlemen. It also shows to you your personal idea and so on and so forth. That's why we need to understand that this kind of fashion and this kind of clothing is essentially important for the human life and human continuity, not to mention that people can be rejected by the society because of their way of clothing, for example. That's why we said that it is okay to some people, to some layer of the society, to actually follow the fashion trends that actually exist in status quo. But moreover, ladies and gentlemen, let's assume that government side of the house is going to say that they only let people to wear luxury brand, for example, because they want the fashion to be very limited education. That's why it is going to be very environmentalist as what they want. Limited edition product, and then the fashion or the clothing product that is very that produced by eco-friendly way, for example, ladies and gentlemen, which we think that this kind of thing is very egoistic because it is going to be very, very much costly, ladies and gentlemen. Why then it is bad, ladies and gentlemen? Because first, we believe that not all people can afford this kind of luxury brand, ladies and gentlemen. We already told you at the very first beginning that there are a lot of people that we need to cater, ladies and gentlemen, middle to low society that do not even have a stable job and stable income. For example, there are people like students, for example, and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. That's why there is access like a more affordable cloth branding and so on and so forth under our side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. But second of all, it is the nature of human being of the boringness in itself, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot wear the same clothes every single day, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you need the variations and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's talk about the idea of donation and things like that, ladies and gentlemen. The idea of donation is not going to be accessed under government side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. They will never, never have the idea of donating their clothes, ladies and gentlemen. People under government is going to be willing to collect all brand stuff, even they do not using that, ladies and gentlemen, because they only have those kind of precious clothing, ladies and gentlemen. They do not have the idea of give them to the people that actually need that, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to more likely to menimbun barang-barang, even if they do not wear that, ladies and gentlemen, simply because it is costly, simply because it is very precious, ladies and gentlemen. And at outside of the house, we admit that it is fast, ladies and gentlemen. It is a fast fashion, but the idea of donation is going to be still there, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look at the example on how we already characterize to you who are the mainstream consumers here, ladies and gentlemen. They're the people that actually have a very limited budget. The moment when they want to buy new clothes, they're more likely to sell their old clothes, ladies and gentlemen, even to thrifting shop, to pre-love shop, and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen, because they do not afford for the new clothes because they do not have because their money or their capacity is limited, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we believe that menimbun barang is not going to be accessed under outside of the house. But second of all, we admit that not all people are going to do recycling their clothes, ladies and gentlemen, simply because they have more power to buy new clothes without selling their old clothes, ladies and gentlemen. But the idea of sympathy and empathy to donate to the victim or earthquake, for example, and so on and so forth, it's going to be access and exclusive under outside of the house, ladies and gentlemen. That's why the idea of those kind of donation and awareness of the environmental are going to be better under outside of the house, ladies and gentlemen. But now let's talk about the second thing, which is which proposal is going to be better for environmental or the waste regulation of basically industry of the clothing at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Under government side of the house, they say that the industry of clothing is going to be environmentalist and so on and so forth. They said that under our side of the house, the fast fashion is going to be very bad. It is going to be polluted the water and land and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. The first thing we're going to say is that we have what we call as AMDA, ladies and gentlemen, or analysis dampak lingkungan, which is the supervision coming from the government, for example, ladies and gentlemen. Government can already give izin usaha to some clothing brand if they can make sure that they're going to still keep the environmental clean, ladies and gentlemen. This kind of idea is also exists as a counterbalance mechanism of the government and government attempt, ladies and gentlemen. But moreover, we believe that
Check.
we believe that yes. Moreover, we believe that the waste regulation or carbon emission is going to be better under our house, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because the awareness of the climate change and stuff is already there within the society, ladies and gentlemen. We already told to you that our current characterization of the society is that they are progressive, ladies and gentlemen. We said that the nature of the trend is that because of they are following this certain celebrity or certain public figure, ladies and gentlemen. While we believe that public figure have the burden to actually being an environmentalist at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, simply because they need to readjust and adjusting with the people of the society at the very first beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Why government is having that kind of awareness? We believe that it is already being the international issues, where there are a lot of international condemnation to country that is not being environmentalist, ladies and gentlemen. That's why country is more likely in status quo are already being aware of that kind of environmental things. And we so proud to oppose this motion.
Thank you very much. Now I welcome the replied speaker from the oppositions to end the case of the opposition. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The problem coming from the government side of the house is that they never prove to you why then their proposal is practically achievable in their side of the house. They simply saying that when the moment you are love the environment, you need to use the branded stuff and the really eco-friendly clothing and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. The problem is that how then all layer of society will going to be apply this kind of mechanism, ladies and gentlemen. In our side, at least in our side, even if they are like not using an eco-friendly and so on and so forth, and they use a lot, they change a lot of fashions in many periods. For example, like at least there are so many mechanism, counter mechanism that are given to you. What are the mechanism that they giving to you already? For example, first the idea of donations that you are most likely to happen in our case, ladies and gentlemen, because of in our side that every people have in our side in mainstream consumer characterized to you are willing to giving the donations to every people that needs that kind of clothes, for example, in order to help them and so on and so forth, because they're not afraid to that much, because the cloth is not that price and so on and so forth. So the idea of sympathy and empathy exists in our side. But secondly, when the moment they are not, for example, donating, at least the idea of thrifting and also the pre-love in order to gain the sustainability in mainstream customer is existing in our side, for example, because it's characterized to you that the middle to low class in our society will already cater to you. For example, like the middle are going to be sell their pre-love, for example, and buy by the low class with a cheaper price. So that's why at least in our side we can help those kind of people, ladies and gentlemen. What makes this the environmentally good? Because of what? The circulation of clothing, it's going to be rolling, ladies and gentlemen. It will never be stopped. The idea of menimbung and so on and so forth will never be happening in our side, ladies and gentlemen. Thirdly, will prove to you why then the current mechanisms that already happens is enough. For example, like AMDAL, like analysis dampak lingkungan from the governments towards the company to selling the brands and so forth, is the counter mechanism on how those kind of brands are going to be really willing to the environment and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. At least this kind of mechanism from the government are minimalizing how to educating all the company to begin with, right? The problem coming from government is that they just trying to say is that okay, when the moment you're going to be fast fashion, for example, you are not love to the environment without necessarily what then the activists need to never necessarily prove to us who or exactly the actor that the activists environmentalists need to protect at the begin with. When the moment they want to protect the vulnerable actors, so then do not force for individuals to do buy the luxury brands, even if they are trying to say even if they're trying to say okay, every people can afford those kind of luxury brands. And our site will prove to you that this kind of mainstream customer are going to be harmed in the end of the day. For example, they buy the luxury brand in form of credit, in form of cicil, in credit, in form of pinjaman, and in form of, for example, like bunga dan lain sebagainya. This kind of harm for this kind of people, because this is you are as an activist who protect the vulnerable actor, you are immorally to impose this kind of proposal to other people. As we say, the practical mechanisms proposal in our set is that you are as an environmentalist or activist, you more likely practically good when the moment you are socialization and doing and educate hand in hand with the current like mainstream customer in itself, and it will going to be practical achievable in another side, that the people, at least we have giving the understanding towards those kind of people to not to do recycling, the cloth become bags, and so on and so forth. So for those reasons, we deserve to win. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I invite the reply speaker of the government side of the house. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are, but you're echoing.
Am I audible for now?
Okay.
Okay, so I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, first of all, the opposition of the House say that we don't have any mechanism, right? We already told you clearly in the first place that how we're going to stop this fast fashion, because we believe that it will decrease the amount of waste in the first place. We already told you that how the status quo right now, our world, our environment is already damaged. We are trying to prevent the possibility and more worse problem in the end of the day. And we're also going to support that, and why we support it by also make the contribution of the activism, because they are the one who actually do the campaign to people, and that will also be our support model that can actually support people to also stop using fast fashion and go to recycled fashion, right? And the problem with the opposition right now is that from the first speaker until the second speaker to the third, there is no proof and about the urgency about why they should implement fast fashion, and they don't give us any counterbalance about how this fast fashion will not going to damage the environment in the end of the day. My big question for the opposition is that how they really neglect the main problem here that we introduced it in the beginning, right? Okay, so their main idea is how they want to capture all the poor people to give them a more accessible clothes, right? But my second already told you that poor people is the one who are gonna be suffer in your model in the end of the day. We already told you that if there is a possible natural disaster that caused by fast fashion, poor people will gonna be the one who gonna suffer a lot. Why? My second speaker already told you the example about floods, how poor people, lots of them lose their home because they have a low foundation of home, and etc. And they're actually gonna be the one who actually suffer in the end of the day, right? It shows us how harsh it is natural disaster, how harsh it is environmental issues, which the opposition is still lacking of responsive. And also they say that, oh, we're going to do a recycle to our like in our model. They say that there is a circulation of clothing will roll in. Well, yeah, will be something like that, but they really neglecting the status quo where this world is already full of climate change issues and it's already damaged, and how you want to double the burden by doing the fast fashion, which means more waste, more chemicals, more textile, which spends lots of times to decompose, which is really bad for our soil pollution and etc. And also with the opposition say that we think that what the opposition will recycle in the end of the day is going to be the amount of fast fashion waste, because we already told you that the characteristic of fast fashion is that new products every week, more textiles, and we know that how my trust speaker already point out to you how the cheapness that they trying to bring in this model is actually the reason why there will be a lot of consumerism from the society, right? Like how there will be an uncontrolled consumerism, especially from teenagers, especially from people who are still labile and want to follow the rules. And they also neglect the idea that how there is a culture called throwing away clothes. We already told you why they will likely to train throwing away clothes, because how are you gonna recycle this amount of textile of fast fashion in the same place in the same time. There is no proof in their side. I mean, they can say something like, it will be more acceptable if they say something like, we're gonna have a policy to control this, but there's actually no explanation of that, and they're always saying that, oh, it will be circularized in the end of the day. But the problem is our Earth is already damaged, and we don't have, that's why we think that we're winning this clash. And also, we already told that poor people can still access cheap clothes. I mean, before fast fashion even exists, even lots of people already can access cheap clothes. And also there's some, my second article, there are something called thrift shops, recycled clothes, and there is no explanation on the opposition about why our solution is not effective to capture these people. I mean, they say that they want to give a human rights to these people to follow the trends, but yeah, what if the trend is actually going to be the one who destroy you in the end of the day? And also, we already told you that with this recycled clothing and etc. and our alternative, people can still follow trendism, because like my church already told you that all these clothing brands are still having high standards, because the one who do the recycled clothing, like I told you, is the Victoria's Secret, who basically competes with the high standard, and they're still going to be fashionable with this kind of clothes instead of just focusing with the fast fashion, who's really not eco-friendly. And this is why we are very proud to post that we actually win this debate. Why? Because we managed to capture all this layer of society, poor people, and we already told you that how privileged people is going to be possible to actually monopoly this. How we're gonna trying to protect our environment with the support of the activism itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you. So the debate is already end. I hope that all debaters may leave this breakout room. Oh, no. Just stay in this breakout rooms, and I will call you guys when I already have the results for our verbal educations. Thank you.